If now is not the time for action, when is the time? What's it going to take? Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. She represents the district that Annunciation is located in.
Welcome, Congresswoman. Condolences to the community and the families. Your leadership right now is important in this moment, not just because of what you can say or do legislatively, but having that presence there to show that as an elected official, you are on the ground with your folks and you appreciate this journey. I agree with the mayor. I'm not, the thoughts and prayers, I'm so beyond that nonsense, the lie of that. Because what we have are people who continue to stand in the way of actually doing something to stop the violence against their own kids. It is amazing to me. We watch young kids die in classrooms and now in church, and all we get are thoughts and prayers. What can you tell us about this community, and what's on your heart at this moment as you sort of wrap your head around yet again another national tragedy involving the killing of young kids?
Thank you all for having us. And I would say our community does, in many ways, appreciate the prayers and the support that we are getting, the outpouring of support. What I feel is the most tragic as a mother, as a member of this community, is that the fact that these, two angels were doing one of the most innocent things we want our kids to do, which is to sit in prayer. And they were assassinated by an assailant who did get access to a deadly weapon that did now shatter the lives of two, will forever impact the lives of 17 others. And will forever have a lasting impact, not just on our entire community, but the Catholic community within Minneapolis. Mm-hmm. This is the first time they have felt targeted, and it is important for us to remember that these tragedies can be avoided. We talked about thoughts and prayers and taking action when Columbine happened, back when I was in high school. We talked about the devastation of Sandy Hook when I was a young mom. And we are still talking about it. And I cannot imagine the heartbreak that these families must feel, knowing that they had just dropped off their babies to go to school and to start their day praying. And to be called within moments after they had dropped their children off and be told that not only some of their children were dead, others were hospitalized, and their whole community and their lives will forever be changed. We have to take action.
Congresswoman, what does that action look like? The last time that there was a gun prevention bill was in 2022. President Biden signed that into law. It was bipartisan in nature. But this administration, just last month, it was reported in Reuters that the Trump administration slashed federal funding for gun violence prevention. I'm going to read something to you. The Trump administration has terminated more than half of all federal funding for gun violence prevention programs in the U.S., cutting $158 million in grants. A DOJ official told Reuters the gun violence grants were eliminated because they, quote, no longer effectuate the program's goals or agency's priorities. It feels like the federal government is not coming to save the children of America from things like this. It feels like on the state level, on the local level, something is going to have to change. People are going to have to be more creative to figure out how to stop these kinds of things. Do you agree with that?
I do, but we also have to understand that we live in a union. In Minnesota, we have strong gun laws, but Indiana is not that far away from us. And so we have to recognize, as people who live in the United States, a community like Minneapolis or just the state of Minnesota taking action does not prevent our neighbor from coming and harming one of our community members. And so we have to collectively think of ourselves as people who collectively reside in this country, who are impacted by the decisions that are the lack of decisions or decisions that are made in different states, because we are in one country. And so there has to be federal laws that are introduced that safeguard life in this country. Simone said something earlier that sits with me forever, which is, we have this problem uniquely as a country, because the rest of the world, once they saw there might be a problem, once they got their first taste of that heartbreak of losing their children in a senseless way, they said no more, not again. And so in our country, in order for continuously make excuses on why we are not going to take a collective action on a federal level that collectively addresses this problem is beyond me. And I want the mothers, in this country to rise up and to recognize that for the love of the Second Amendment, for the love of our gun culture, we have to have a greater love for our kids. We have to have a greater love for the safety of our communities. Something has to prevail, because the rest of the world has decided that they love their children way more than they love their ability to have easy access to guns. And we have to get there as well.
I was struck by a lot of the reactions from people, not just in Minneapolis and Minnesota today, but folks on cable news, folks all across the country. And I want to play for you something that Trey Gowdy actually had to say.
Our system is reactive. Something bad happens, we react to it. And what people are crying for now is, how can we prevent this? How can we stop it? And the only way to stop it is to identify the shooter ahead of time or keep the weapons out of their hands. And so we're going to have a conversation of freedom versus protecting children. I mean, how many school shootings does it take?
It's a great question. I mean, but Trey Gowdy, and this isn't the first time he's spoken out about gun violence, particularly in school shootings, but he used to represent South Carolina's 4th Congressional District from 2011 to 2019. I don't recall him introducing legislation, federal legislation. I think that he is asking the right question. Apparently today was enough for Trey Gowdy. Is it enough for the rest of your Republican colleagues? How many more children have to die in this country?
Yeah, I mean, I do believe Trey is correct in saying we have to ask these questions. And I don't actually think the choice has to be between freedom and love of our children and the protection of our children. I think there are ways in order for us to continue to have freedoms, but to wisely decide there has to be some safeguards. We have freedoms in all other aspects, and we always create safeguards to make sure people are protected. And so I do believe that we have to put our past statements, our past views, in the rear view mirror, come together as a country, as lawmakers who make a decision on a federal level and collectively make a decision on something that makes sense, that keeps our children or our communities safe. I think we have done enough blaming each other, never really coming to the solution. But I think it is time for us to find a solution to make sure guns don't end up in the wrong hands. But also, yes, to what he was saying, there is somebody who knows something. So obviously, we need to also collectively think of our collective safety and decide, yes, it is time to call somebody. It is time to say something when you notice that there is some sort of red flag that is being presented. We see all of these YouTube videos that are later shown to people, or their social media presence, and people just kind of disregard it. If someone is posting something that is alarming to you, please, for the sake of our children, tell someone so that they can be alerted and there can be action taken before a life is lost.
Congresswoman, I could not agree more with not just the sentiment of what you just expressed, but the importance of it relative to public policy, because there's always been this space in which the character, the nature of the individual, the things that lead that individual to behave and act out the way they do, that's not been accounted for in the past. And yet there are people around that person who see this behavior, who should be alerted to it, and have the confidence and the ability to alert others. And that's very, very important. You can't necessarily legislate that. And I think that's part of what you're saying. So there is sort of the humanity of all of us that has to come forward in a moment like this, for sure. But even before now, here's where I have the problem when it comes to this issue as someone who's a gun owner and certainly been a supporter of the Second Amendment in the traditional political context, is that when your house is on fire, do you let it burn or do you call for help? And that's really what we're talking about here. We're watching our children burn in the fire, in the gunfire, in the hails of bullets that are shot at them. We're watching it in nightclubs. We're watching it in our schools. And yet we somehow don't want to call for help. Right now, how would you ask Congress to call for help and to be that help?
Yeah, I mean, I would say let's come together and figure out a solution. There are, compromises that can be made to both honor the freedoms that people want to have and to honor the lives that have been lost with real solutions to stop the loss of life going forward. I don't think protecting our children should be a partisan issue. And I don't think it is a partisan issue for us to say it is alarming for places where we send our children to get an education. Should not be a place where we worry if they get slaughtered. Places of worship where we want our little angels praying to God is a place where we want to see them get slaughtered. This, to me, sounds common sense.